She struggled to survive a COVID vaccine clinical trial, how her incredible spirit led to a global movement. Brianne Dressen on the secrets of the pharmaceutical industry and her brave fight in court. Next. Brianne Dressen is the co-author of Worth a Shot. Thank you, Brianne, for being here, for fighting for the truth, I think through really unimaginable circumstances to so many of us, but appreciate you doing this.
Oh, thanks for having me.
The COVID era, I think, seems so long ago. Some are still suffering the consequences more than others, Brianne. But take us back. It's 2020. I know a bit about your story. You're a busy mom at the time, a preschool teacher, married to a PhD chemist, by the way. But you volunteer to be part of the AstraZeneca COVID vaccine trial. Why was that something you wanted to do at the time?
It just seemed like second nature to me. I was watching what was going on the news. I have medical professionals that are in my family, and hearing the horrific stories about what was going on with the COVID vaccines or with COVID in general in the hospitals was alarming enough for me to go, I wanted to be part of the solution. So that's why I enrolled in the clinical trial. It just seemed like not if I was going to get the COVID vaccine, but when.
But some troubling symptoms set in pretty quickly for you, don't they? And it turns absolutely awful very soon after.
Yeah, my reaction started within an hour, and it started with this strange pins and needles sensation down the same arm as my injection. And it spread throughout my entire body. And I still feel that horrific pins and needles sensation to this day, 24/7.
Even the day after you had the shot, you couldn't go back to the classroom. You're basically done teaching, not even 24 hours later? Talk a little bit more about what you're experiencing and then the reaction from the clinic and the drug company that follows.
Yeah, so within the first day, my career was done. And I still have yet to be able to go back. So it's basically a conclusion 4 years later that my career is over. I'm disabled. Within the first 2.5 weeks, I landed in the ER 4 times. I ended up in the hospital where I was diagnosed with anxiety due to the COVID vaccine after my legs stopped working and I had become incontinent. The drug company was of no help, sadly. They agreed to help me medically and financially if there was an injury as a result of the research, which was the COVID vaccine. And as soon as my issues popped up, it's as if the drug company couldn't get away from me fast enough. So it really spiraled into a long, arduous journey of learning, what happens when, big corporate interests overtake, and their agenda overtakes the needs of an individual. And it's been something that I wish I'd never had to learn, but I definitely learned the hard way.
Yeah, you've been back there behind the curtain at this point and then sharing it with all of us, which has been so incredibly important. But I completely understand not the journey you'd want to be on. But it's a few years obviously have passed now since. I know you walk with a cane. There's so many of these stories out there that people will look at a person and not think that, they have one of these injuries invisible in some cases. Obviously not the case, but you finally, I understand, have an actual diagnosis. Talk about that and then what that will mean for you moving forward.
Yeah, so most people that are dealing with a complex chronic illness end up with a laundry list of diagnoses. And at this point, I've been diagnosed with small fiber neuropathy, chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy, which essentially means that my immune system is attacking my nervous system. And it's similar to MS, except from working from the central nervous system out. This works from the outside of the nervous system in. And so it's a lot of pain, a lot of fatigue. The motor function, as you alluded to before, some days I need a cane, some days I don't. But just like everybody else dealing with this is a invisible illness largely. And so you could be walking down the street and have no idea that the person that just walked by you is dealing with a screaming horrific tinnitus all the time from their vaccine or they're having a problem just getting their heart rate low enough so they can actually walk at a normal pace. And then, of course, there's the other, most of these people that are out of sight, out of mind, where they're no longer able to work. They're not even able to walk around the block. So you literally are not seeing them out in the workplace. You're not seeing them at the kids' soccer games. These are people that have largely just been removed from society because they're too sick to be able to get out of their house.
And you now run an advocacy program, Brianne. Tell us about that, though. React19.org. It's called React19. And I have to say that Hear Our Voices section, just simply heartbreaking. But tell us more about the program.
Yeah, so React 19 is an organization that we launched primarily out of necessity. The drug companies weren't doing anything. The government definitely wasn't going to do anything. And the needs of the people that are suffering from COVID vaccine adverse events, it's profound. Anything from compensation to being able to find a doctor that is just willing to recognize that this is an issue at all. So we represent over 36,000 Americans. We have partnered with over 20 other organizations globally who are all founded by people that are harmed by COVID vaccines, who are dedicated to provide this kind of emotional and physical support for others that are in this situation. To date, React 19, which has been a volunteer organization up until now, we have donated over $900,000 to people that are harmed by COVID vaccines for out-of-pocket medical expenses. The reason why we have had to do this program is because the federal compensation program has only issued $470,000 total in the history of the program. And $370,000 of that went to a death benefit, which even for a death benefit, I think $300,000 is far too low. So the average payout has been about $1,500 per person that they've awarded. So the need for Americans is great because, as you may or may not know, if you're harmed by a COVID vaccine, you are not able to seek restitution from the drug companies. Your right to sue is gone. And the compensation program that is supposed to fill that space is this failing compensation program that has over 98% rejection rate. And it's just ridiculous. So we work with people every single day to try to help get them access to just essential medical care. And that's through connecting them through our network of 200 providers. But then it also means that sometimes these people need a little bit of money to be able to get there because they're out of work, they can't get disability, and all of that income is then replaced with medical bills. So yeah, the need is great.
You've also written a book about your experience called Worth a Shot, Secrets of the Clinical Trial Participant Who Inspired a Global Movement. So eventually, AstraZeneca, it's pulled off the shelves. This isn't over for you, though, as you have an unprecedented court case. You're speaking to that, this PrEP Act, which basically the federal government grants immunity to vaccine manufacturers. Give us some insight about where that case is at the moment.
Yeah, so we filed the first and only case against a drug company in the United States. We are not suing for injury because just like anyone else, I too cannot sue for them injuring me. We are suing them due to contract violations because they did sign in their contract that they would pay for certain medical expenses and lost income, and that they would provide some kind of medical help, and they did none of those. They sent me one check for $590, and they sent me a settlement offer for $1,200 after that, 6 months later, when a news story ran that made them look bad. And that's been it. So we spent years trying to get them to do the right thing and to provide some kind of assistance, and they provided none. So we had no choice but to file this lawsuit. The first hearing that we had was the end of October 2024, and the PrEP Act was challenged. They were trying to claim that the PrEP Act was protecting them from any and all obligations that they signed in the contract, and the judge said, I don't agree. So now it's going to the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals.
Well, through this terrible ordeal, you've obviously gained so much insight. Many of us, haven't been able to see for ourselves. But for example, you point this out. Dr. Fauci actually met with those who suffered vaccine injuries early on. You've witnessed tech censorship right before your eyes, and I'm sure you've been called all the names as a result of coming forward and pointing this out. But through all of this, what do you want to come out of all of this? What does justice, look like for you?
Justice for me looks pretty simple. I think everyone that's been harmed by a pharmaceutical product should have their day in court. I think that every single person that's been harmed by a COVID vaccine or a pharmaceutical product should be able to share their lived and true experience online. They should be able to not have to fear any kind of reprisal for sharing their experience with, say, media outlets and even their doctors. I also don't think that, I think that it would be really important for us to be able to remove politics from the physician and patient relationship. So that to-do list is long, and hopefully we can get something started with it.
Well, Brianne Dressen, you're certainly leading the way, co-author of Worth a Shot, Secrets of the Clinical Trial Participant Who Inspired a Global Movement. You can find that book on Amazon. And again, head over to react19.org for more information. But thank you so much for all you're doing. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
That will do it for this episode of Liz Collin Reports. We'll see you next time.